Hi, Seth. How are you?
Well, Dr. Wynn, how have you been?
Surviving, you know. It's been crazy.
You look so tired on Monday. You did. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God, we're on quarantine. You still like have to keep your same schedule when you were at school. Oh goodness.
yeah, yeah, I know. It's been intense, you know, all these other things going on. But yeah,
Uh,
how's your family doing?
have a I'll be on my phone in class on Monday. I have to take my doctor's to his cardiologist appointment.
Uh-huh.
I was gonna tell you that. Also, I was gonna tell you that I was really happy to find out that my processor can run a virtual machine. So I was happy about that.
That's good. So, uh, is your dad okay?
He's fine. He does his well, as fine as can be for his age and going to the doctors and when they tell him to, you need to stop drinking beer, and he's like, what?
Um, I'm gonna try to be on two systems right now, so hopefully it's not echoey. Let me know if you hear echoey. Okay.
No, I don't hear anything yet.
Okay.
But now I'm starting to echo.
It's getting you echo.
Now it is.
Yeah, it is.
How about now?
Now it's fine.
Okay. Good. Let me make myself another co-host. I'm trying to take my big gun out. My computer is, well, I was testing stuff throughout the whole entire week, you know, but okay, it did make myself co-host. But yeah, so you gotta tell your dad to be on, you know, better diet, and it's tough. So my father passed away a few years ago with he had bypass surgery in 2011, and in 2017 his artery was clogged again, and he was 99% clogged, so there was nothing that we could do. And you know, so just be careful. And he was diabetic too. But let me see.
I got my second job interview.
That's good. What infosec?
Yeah, Infosys. It was a,
Infosys.
it was a lot better.
That's good. Well, I'm glad. Sometimes it's hard the first time.
Yeah,
But
I should know by the end of the week if I got the job or not.
okay. Well, I hope you do. So, um, you know, it's slowly but surely, right? Okay, so let's talk about the lab today. Again, I went back and forth on your tools. I spent a lot of time trying to get things to work with the Cisco DevNet, and I ended up scrapping it because Cisco DevNet is boo-boo. But I'll show you the tools so in the future, if you ever wanted to go for their certification, they have a whole section for developer and developers that work with appliances, firmware, etc. And you know that they are one of the leading company that produce, you know, computer network appliances. And so now they have some stuff with the consumer, but before it was mainly for business. However, I wanted to share with you how you can utilize this material that we're learning this week for DevNet, because you know, and if you are able to acquire viral, which is, you know, it's $199 per year. If you are thinking of pursuing Cisco certifications, the whole suite, it's a good investment. I know that they have a higher package at $250, I think. Sometimes they give you a discount, but with that, like you have access to all appliances, you use their cloud environment, you can download a lot of the images that the book talks about, and a lot of the people in the industry. When you get into DevOps and some of the cloud-based positions, even in development side, you're going to see that this type of information is useful. Not a lot of school teach Python for networking. I'm tackling it head on because it's virtual environment right now for learning, and it's difficult, but I'm just going along and trying to make the materials that we have applicable as much as possible. So I might switch back and forth between computer. So when I walk you through the lab, I will use my new computer that I just got because it has better RAM and better processor. But other than that, I will illustrate some of the things. So let's go into screen share. And then a quick announcement, if you wanted to compete for the cyber competition, I had 2 students that sign up. I have about $500 that they allocated that I can put toward that. So I'm sponsoring 2 teams, and I can give some assistance, but I cannot be a full coach this semester only because I have a lot of things going on. But it's a good practice if you wanted to get more in depth with cybersecurity. And you don't have to be super advanced. It gives you the gym, you know, access. So Chris can tell you more because he done that with the NCL. It's very similar to the NCL. And if you've done NCL competition, it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet with some of the things, including scripting. Okay. All right. So if you are interested, message me and then I'll sign you up and I'll cover the fees for you. So I'm working that out. Okay, so let's talk about the lab today. And I meant to put it up the day before, but I apologize because I had to work out some of the issues with the lab and it's not perfect. So disclosure, okay? When you go through and do this lab, I wasn't able, Canvas was kind of down last night or early this morning. I had to upload it to my Google Drive and share it out. So when you click this, it's going to take you to the shared file on Google Drive. You can download that and check it out. Now this uses GNS3, and GNS3 is a really good tool to simulate network, especially if you wanted to get into networking and IT and cybersecurity. A lot of administrators use this tool and even developers use this tool. It's not perfect. It's much better than Packet Tracer, like I mentioned before. So I'll walk you through the process on how to utilize it and how to configure your appliances today, and then at least get you working with your script. Okay. And your script, I only give you one task as far as the Python piece goes, but I wanted to show you some resources that you can use if you wanted to get into netconf and some of the other stuff that the book talks about, along with using additional tools for future references. Okay, so if you haven't downloaded that yet, you can go ahead and do that. Hold on 1 second. Let me get to DevNet. So DevNet has a tool called Nx Os Programmability. Okay, this is a tool that allows you to integrate Sandbox, like what we talked about. Let me minimize the people. And you can use Puppet with it. You can use this for NX API and Python, and it does have JSON capability. Now, the downside of this is a lot of people use this, so it might take you a while to reserve their cloud environment. So what you can do is you can use the Sandbox lab by making reservation um, to the certain type of switches and routers and things that you need. The common one that's used for this particular lab environment is the Nx Cisco switch 9000. You can find 9300 and other type of switches. So now what they have is I will put up a page with some resources for this later, but they have the developer guide, and you can take a look at the developer guide. Now, the challenge that you're gonna have is Cisco uses AnyConnect, and AnyConnect allows you to VPN into the switch or the appliance itself via the web browser, okay, via your internet connection. After that, you can terminal into the actual appliance using SSH with PuTTY. So this is a really good way to kind of understand how to be able to access and program the actual device in a virtual environment. You can find some additional information on the developer guide. Um, However, and then it talks about tools and how to use the shell. It has the capability work with um, to work with the NX. Okay. And then if you're interested, they have a section talking about Nx Os. All of these virtual machines and appliances that they put up, it usually is Linux in the back. So if you're comfortable using Linux, it's going to be simpler. Okay. I actually wrote most of the tutorial for the lab for this. And then I tried for a whole week working this out, but I couldn't get the reserve machine to talk via VPN for me. It keeps kicking me out, and I turn off all my security settings. So when you set this up, what you will need to do is you need to reserve a virtual machines. And then when you go through the section, let me go back. Go to the getting started, it talks about that, okay? And how to do the sandbox. So you basically visit this website, and then you use an account that you have, could be Google or GitHub, etc. And with that, what you have is you have these simulators, and these are free. You don't need, and if for the IoT class, you can share this with Mr. Lee if he doesn't know already. I'm sure he does. But you can have different areas of development with their data center. So now you can reserve a sandbox. So if you refer back to their information, it says Clopen Nx Os box, and then you're going to click reserve. Okay. So you can choose the type of, so this is the one that we probably want to reserve. And this process alone takes 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. And then there are a couple of them. Now it depends. You can take a look at the difference. So you're using a virtual switch. Now, if you have Viral has this capability within it. You're able to access it, but you still have to reserve machine based on Viral. And so Michelle asked me last week, are there free tools? So what I'm presenting to you is that these are the free tools. And as developer and networker and IT people, we wanted to make sure that we use this for training purposes. So let's say that I click reserve here, and it's gonna ask me to register if I haven't for the first time. So for me, I already reserved it. And this is the Nessus 9000 switch. So if you click reserve, you can actually change the days that you want. So normally the base is 8 hours. And the higher the number of hours and minutes that you put in, the longer it's going to take for them to approve it. Basically, it's going to check the criteria. It's an automated process, of course. So if you put in, let's say 5 days, that might take between 20 minutes to 30 minutes to get your machine ready. If they don't have a machine that's available, you're gonna have to wait for them to respond back. So the downside of this is to use a Sandbox that's free. That's gonna take a little bit of time away, but it doesn't cost you money compared to Viral where it's $200 a year. Okay. So once you click reserve, I'll show you. It's gonna take a little bit of time and it's gonna give you the minutes countdown, and then it's gonna tell you whether it's available or not. So this setup thing is gonna blink until it becomes active, is where it's gonna be fully accessible. Now the switch that you see is here, right? And what you have to do is you have to use a virtual private network connection to connect to it. And once they finish setting up, they're going to send you an email with a link for VPN along with the username and password. Okay. So, and you have options to choose different type of open lab environment. Now on the left hand side is some basic instructions on how to use Sandbox, right? Like, and I think they use their default login, which is Cisco 123. And if you wanted additional guide on how to program this particular switch, you would click this link and it kind of walk you through some part in how to configure it first. If it uses SSH, you would then have to set up the SSH on it in order to test your script. Now, going back to the OpenNX environment, if you look at this page, what that provides you is it talks about what you can do, right? And you have an option to use Python or Puppet. And so if you're taking a look at how to set up TACACS, which is Terminal for Controller Access Control System. So in enterprise environment, they would use this type of system for authentication. And Cisco has this implementation for the devices. So here, what you can see is you can take a look at how that script would be written for TACAC server, okay? And it's already pre-made, so you can simply test it with your NX9000 switch on the reserve cloud environment, right? You can copy and paste this into a text editor and then save it as a file with the .py extension, and then be able to launch that as a script if you wanted to set up TACACS. Then after that, you can continue, and it talks about how you can use bash. So config T is a command that's used to when you're in the CLI or the CLMI for the appliance, which is the terminal or the command line for the switch, the router, etc. So in this case, we're using the Nessus 9000. When you go in first, you have to tell it enable, right? Any Cisco appliance, when you start it, in order to access it, you have to use EN or enable. Okay, keep in mind that we have to learn about that today too for our lab. And then once you enable it, you wanted to configure it, like give it an IP address, give it a name, like a host name, set up SSH, set up a user account and make that user account a super user, etc. Put a password in it. So before you could do all those things, you need to make sure that you use config T on the CLI. And then what that does is it switched the mode into the configuration mode, so that way it would write the information that you input into the RAM or the storage of the device. Okay. So here it walks you through on how to use Python Sandbox using your script and also running bash. And if you're not familiar with bash, right, bash, it can be used for Linux, and in Windows environment, that would be PowerShell. So it gives you the step, and then the next part is to use Puppet. Okay. And there are a lot of tutorials about Puppet. Puppet is hot. It's one of those tools that's, that is fairly recent, but a lot of the developers and the administrators are looking into using Puppet and Puppet Labs. So this gives you a little bit of practice. So I might come back and touch on this if I'm able to get things worked out further. But I want to introduce you to some resources. So in case if you wanted to go for the CDNA, which is different than the CCNA, it's for the developer. With Cisco, you wanted to do this practice because it teaches you on how to use programming language like Python, and incorporating JSON and things like that for network appliances like Cisco. Okay, and it's not bad to have on your resume either, because the tools that you use, make sure that you write it down and you put down, whether you have the skills or knowledge for that, and keep maintaining that over time. So I will put the links together and put a page up maybe later today, after my second class, and I will share it with this class. So in case if you're interested, you can do that. Okay, you have any questions? Okay, so let's talk about what we need to do today. One second. So I want to be clear on what we have to do today. And in the case where you cannot run, nested VM, or your computer just doesn't have enough RAM, I want you to at least attempt to install the GNS3 desktop, and you don't have to run it with VM if you don't have the capability for nested virtual machine. Then if you write the script or attempt to write the script, I will give you credit for it, but I want you to at least attempt, so that way you understand the type of tools that's needed for this area. And this type of course, I've looked online, right? They have a lot of different type of tutorials online, but at the same time, they do have certifications and stuff for this area, and it's starting to be really, really hot. So let's talk about GNS. I typed it wrong. See that? GNS3. In this one, what you're going to do is you're using a network simulator, and you are going to install. And another option, like I mentioned, you can use Viral. Viral has very similar environment. So if you're using the Cisco DevNet, that's kind of like what Viral would look like. But Viral has more tools, and then with the membership, you can download a bunch of images. You can pay for a better membership to get more. I put a little bit of tutorial for the LinkedIn Learning. If you have access to LinkedIn Learning, I think I added everybody. If you don't, let me know. And so in this case, we are going to go ahead and download GNS3 software. So there are two things that you need to fully set it up accordingly. One is the desktop, which is the software that you see in step 1. 2, and you can run this on Mac OS. Many people do, right? But in some case, and there are some sub tools that would only work with Windows or Linux. However, GNS3 should work. And so when you visit the website, you choose the operating system that you have on your computer, and you would run it. Right now, they don't have anything that's cloud-based for GNS3. It's more of like an application that you download. So one, you need the executable if you're running Windows. If you're running Mac, you need that PMK package to be able to install. And Linux, they have options for Linux too. 2, in order to test your script through the simulator, GNS3, using an automated system, you need to have a nested virtual machine environment. So what will happen is the application, it's going to connect to a VM that they already created, which is a server. And this server is going to communicate with your application. Then some point down the line, when you're adding the Cisco appliances or the Jupyter appliances or Arista appliances that you wanted to test, when you add those images, the image is actually being installed on the VM that you're running from GNS3. So, and once you have the images installed, that becomes a machine inside a virtual machine. So it's a double layer virtual machine. Okay. And people have tested, right, a machine inside another virtual machine inside a third virtual machine. That works, but it's gonna deplete the resources on the computer. So each virtual machine, keep in mind that it's gonna take about 2 core. So if you're running a quad core, usually it's, if you nest virtual machine, it's about roughly 2 nested virtual machine. In the case, if you have like 12 core on an AMD, you can run multiple nested virtual machine, depending on your RAM capability, how much memory you have. Now, I wanted to warn you on this. So when you go through this lab process, later on, I put a little note saying that you should amp up your RAM on the virtual machine. So when I did that last night, I increased my RAM for the VM on the outside to 8 gigs. And I increased the image for my appliances to 4 gig, right? So it's using 4 of the 8. It became drastically slow, even though I have at least 16 gig in my system. And I have, the one that I'm running now, I think it's on an 8 core, and then the one that I'm going to use to demo some of this is it's higher. Okay, so hardware limitations, just keep in mind. And if you have challenges with that, just put a note, and when you submit your assignment, let me know. And I wanted you to attempt it, and if you're unable to do that because we don't have the hardware for it, I understand. Okay, so I will work with you on that. All right.
Question.
Yes.
So with the 8 GB RAM in the VM, and then the 4 GB in the GNS3 VM, is how long would it take us to do this homework once we have that installed and we run the script?
Not very long. Not long at all. So I'm going to demo the majority of the part right now, because once you have everything set up and running the script is very easy. The challenge is QEMU is the services that's on the GNS3 server that you're going to launch and use. It utilizes a lot of the resources, and sometimes it doesn't respond as effectively as you hope, because you're running a script in a nested virtual machine. It's a machine inside another virtual machine. So it's going to have to take that, store it into the RAM, and then convert that back to the outer virtual machine in order to give you something. And if once you have it running, and if your script works, it should be just like a few minutes. But at the same time, the challenge for it would be that how it allocates resource and whether QEMU is responding. And if you testing with Jupyter, GNOS requires more. So in the case where if you wanted to do GNOS as a nested virtual machine inside your GNS3 VM, it becomes a little bit laggy. Okay, I'm not a little bit, but a lot laggy. Okay, so ideally, if we get everything working, it should be less than 2 hours for this whole entire thing. Because it takes me a while, because I have to test it, take screen capture, go back, write down, take screen capture. So it takes me a little bit. So I'm gonna walk you through that right now. Okay, so let me see if I can have the capability to share as a co-host. I think I might be. Okay, so let me stop share on this real quick. Okay. And then I'm gonna share on this. Sorry, my antivirus is running in the middle of the day. Okay, so if you wanted to download, you can simply look up GNS3, right, download, or you can use the link that I provided. Okay, so here is the download page. I'm using Windows. If you use the Mac, but look at the installation guide, okay? Because if you have questions, if you wanted to, if you're stuck on a certain area, why is it not going through? If you're using Linux, that's there. So I'm going to go ahead and click download. Let me see. So I will go ahead and put in this. So it will require you to register. And then you just fill out the information. Okay. All right. Oh, it says I'm already a member. So let's try a different email. It's always trying to save my stuff. All right. So once you create an account, you can go ahead and get a free download. If you wanted to know how to do the installation, you can actually click the video. I like GNS3 for the fact that they are very thorough with the resources that they put out. It's a really great community to be part of. So download, right? And then we're gonna go ahead and click download for Windows. So the executable for Microsoft Windows environment is going to show once you do that. If you're using a Mac, it's going to give you I think it's a PKMG package that needs to be installed. Now, you can fill out additional information for marketing purposes where they give you additional tools. So in the case if you are going to become an IT administrator and you need subnet calculator, there's there. Some of the stuff, it's useful. I think there are tons of tools that they give away. You don't need to do that really if you don't want to use it. Okay. So once the executable is downloaded, you just simply go through the wizard for the installation. Go click next, and then you have to agree to their license, and then go next. Now here is where you're gonna select GNS3 VM. Now, if you don't do that here, you can always download it later and then launch it with Virtualbox. But if you do it here, then it automatically gives you the VM with this process, okay? You can select the tools or not selecting the tools, that's up to you. If you don't select the tools, you will likely have to download it later if you need it. So go ahead and click next. And note that it's gonna put it into this particular folder, right? We're going to keep it default. So in case we need to troubleshoot it, we can use the community information and go there. Now, for the purpose of the usage, basically that's going to be across the board for all students, I choose Virtualbox. But this will also work with VMware Workstation, not Workstation Player, okay? And VMware Workstation has a separate, so what you're doing here is you're picking the flavor of the virtual machine that they're gonna give you. If you're using VMware Workstation, there's a trial period, so it's 30 days. But if you use the player, it will not allow you to do nested virtual machine. If you're using Microsoft Hyper-V, you can also download the version for the Hyper-V and then, of course, VMware EXI. So I'm just going to choose VirtualBox because we already used VirtualBox last week. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit, it's going to install the library and the things that it needs. As you know, you saw there's a lot of, like Qt, Python, C++ stuff that's going to come in for this particular application. Okay. So now if you selected the VM, it's going to download it concurrently with okay. So this process, depending on your system, it might take a few minutes. Now in the past, GNS3, if you selected the tools, it's going to try to put a bunch of tools on there, including Wireshark, and, IP calculator and so forth. So why does it say network requested failed? All right, hopefully the virtual machine has been downloaded and it's located in the users, downloads, and it's going to put it in download for me. So I can go there and set that up later. This part, you need to install WinCap, and WinCap is to use for network detection. So you have to agree to it, and then you can initialize it as boot start. So we keep everything default and click finish. And then with the NPCap, because Nmap is the company, the organization that produced that, right? And if you're familiar with Zenmap or Nmap in security classes, right? It's basically for network sniffer, the network detection, etc. So here you can install. So I'm just going to use this. I don't need to use any loopback or anything like that. So I don't have to choose the other options. And because I'm on wireless, that's why it's selecting the 802.11. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish. Any questions so far? So while I wait for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and access. I'm going to download VirtualBox, and I know you did this last time.
How often are we going to be using this GNS3
At least
VM? Every
until
week?
at least until after layer 3 and 4, because right now we're in layer 2. The way the book is written is you got the low level devices, it's going to go from switch to router and then higher. So at the higher level, we might not be able to utilize it as much. So the reason why I wanted to show you this is not only that you're going to need to use it for this lab, but down the line you might need to practice your script or to put together a network, or you can utilize it for the CIS26 ABC DEF or whatever they're teaching at RCC, right? Or the CIS40A at Moreno Valley, etc. Okay, so it does, it's relevant for other classes. And I'll come back to it at times, right? I can show you how to incorporate it for other things, because this class is mainly about scripting for network. So, okay. Here's my VirtualBox. I'm just going to do a quick installation on it while I wait for my GNS3 to go. Okay. So let's take a few minutes to go for the GNS3, and then we are gonna go ahead and set up the Oracle Virtualbox if you haven't done that last time. Okay. Now, if you're using VMware or other products, make sure that you have the hypervisor. So this is the hypervisor. It's the software that we're able to use for the virtual machines, all different type of virtual machines. And even in a cloud environment, you use virtual machine, right? If you're logging on and accessing AWS through your free student account, you see virtual machines. You can use PuTTY to connect to them. You can use RDP if you're using Windows environment. Once you enable some of the network features, you can directly connect to these servers and be able to configure them. And I think I showed most of you that when you were taking my class, CIS25 or CIS27. If you haven't, you can check out Amazon tutorial. They do a good job at showing you how to set it up. And there's also YouTube video. All right. So the things that we wanted to focus on when we set up our virtual machine for this particular lab is going to be the resources that can be allocated. Okay. One second. Let me get my. One thing about all the new system is that they don't give you as many USB ports as what they used to give you, right? That you get like 2 USB ports because everything is on the cloud. All right. Let me see. I don't know if I have.
Hey, Professor, sorry I'm late. Work ran a little late. I was helping a student.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So we're just kind of going through some of the beginning part of the lab. I'm just showing the installation with the GNS3. Oh, gosh. Microsoft is just relentless. Why is it not letting me? Okay, start. Set. Okay. All right, so here we are, right? We already downloaded, we are installing. We and notice that this is supported by SolarWinds, right? They are one of the companies that got the recent breach with the government. I don't know if you heard about that. You know, FireEye was the one that caught that. But anyway, so with the simulator, we wanted to make sure we select GNS3 desktop and virtual machine. And then it gives you the screenshot, more screenshot, installing Virtualbox, which is what I'm doing now, right? Walking you through on how to do this. Now, in this part, I don't know if you've seen some tutorial videos, and tutorial videos tells you you don't have to configure this, which you don't. Now, if you configure it, you can run the appliances on it. So if you like, you can just skip this part and or you can have it select run appliances with the virtual machine, which is going to be the GNS3. Okay. Now, if you didn't download the GNS3 virtual machine before, then you have to download it again. One of the big important area is going to be this right here. Okay, so the VirtualBox 6.1 supports nested. Okay, so if you're using an older version of VirtualBox, that will not work. 6.0 doesn't support nested. And this feature has to be enabled. Okay, I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so I know that my downloads contain this GNS3 VM VirtualBox that was downloaded when I installed GNS3. Okay, I need to extract this, so you can right click And then you can simply choose extract all. If you have 7-zip or some type of tool, you can do that. And then it's gonna go ahead and put another folder, but we have to extract it. Okay, so go find it in the downloads folder, and then you're gonna, so here is the virtual machine. So if you downloaded the VMware one and you try to use it for the Virtualbox, it will not work. They have specific file extension that's being utilized for specific application. So don't mix them up. Okay, make sure that you get it for Virtualbox if you're using Virtualbox. Then here is my virtual machine. I showed you that. Then in here, what you need to do is for Virtualbox, you've seen this last week, but I'm going to run through it again. What you need to do is you need to bring in the appliance, right? Now, last week we mainly created a virtual machine. So when you bring in the appliance, you can have it add or you can import that in. And I normally do import in, and then I would browse to my download folder. And then I choose my virtual machine. I don't have to create it. I just download it, right? So what it's going to do is important note, okay? Because this virtual machine using Virtualbox, it uses the .ova extension. It's going to put it into the default folder here when it's being used for Virtualbox. Okay, now here is what is allocated for this virtual machine. The name of it is GNS3 VM. Important note to take down because we wanted to make sure that we have it set up with the command prompt for it to nest virtual machine. Now on your computer, it might say lower RAM. It depends on the amount of RAM that you have. So if you have less RAM, it might give you one gig. But normally it's going to try to take up 2 gigs for the virtual machine. If you can give it more, sure, why not, right? I told you last night I tried to up it every time and to test it and see how it would be responding. It tells me that I'm using an Intel network adapter, and then the CPU, it's seeing it as 1, but because it's multi-core, so we're going to go ahead, it's going to utilize 1 for this virtual machine. So we're going to go ahead and import it, and this is going to take a few minutes. And while that's going, we're going to come back to here, check up on our GNS3. That's going to go. Okay. So fairly fast with that. Now, before we start running this virtual machine, we wanted to check this one. And that's the instruction that I put down here. Check your processor information for VT. So if you're using an AMD, the later, processor for AMD, they're all capable of virtualizing and nested. Then if you're using Intel after i5, you are able to utilize virtualization. However, the software, whether the hypervisor allows you to do that or not, is really, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. So what I want to show you is this part. So before you launch a virtual machine, you check out your system, right? And the machine, it always have settings. So in your settings, what you will see is you can change. So think of this as your basic input output, your BIOS information for your virtual machine. So you are going to go ahead and click on system. So on system, it tells you this is what it sees as motherboard. And then for the processor, if your virtual machine shows that this is grayed out, then what you need to do is you need to follow step 7, I believe. Yeah, if it showed that it's grayed out, I wrote down the step for you how to do that. And if you're using Linux, right, I put down the link for the Linux to enable the virtual machine. Okay. Now on the Mac, that's not going to be a problem. Okay. So if the processor on the Mac is capable of doing nested, it's going to give it to you. Okay. So keep in mind that it's not always going to show, you know, like this. It might show that it's grayed out and you can't check the box. So you have to go to command prompt and then, I'm sorry, I think I'm missing something here. You need to put in change directory. And because what you're doing is you're accessing the location of where the VirtualBox is installed, the application, and then you're using the manager of the VirtualBox to configure the nested Hyper-V, or I'm sorry, the nested VT for the VirtualBox. So make sure that you put all of this in after you change the directory. Okay? And then press enter. After that, what you need to do is close out VirtualBox and then reopen it. You will see the difference. Okay. So you're going to close and reopen the application. And then what you will see is it's going to allow this. Okay. And then you're going to click OK. Now, if you wanted to change the RAM, you can take a look at the RAM information and then go to settings, and then you can set up for your RAM and for your system and even the network. Okay.
What RAM is the minimum you can have for Linux?
For Linux, the minimum, as in the virtual machine, is about a gig, like 1024 meg.
Okay.
But the maximum you can have is as much RAM as you can have in your computer, right? Normally it starts at 2. So if you wanted to up it, you can always up it. Okay. Let me see. And this is just for the storage for the disk. Oh, yeah. So the memory, if you want to crank it up, you can change that here. And then, or you can just use the slide bar. So the base, so I have 32 gig on this one. This is the reason why I want to choose this one to demo. So I'm going to try to up it so you can see. So I'm going to give it like 8 gig. And then I'm going to click OK. All right. So now, yeah, now we're good. We're going to go ahead and click start. Warning, okay? When you run your desktop and virtual machine, sometimes you get this weird thing going where it says it's trying to connect to the local host. It's better to launch the application first and then start the virtual machine. Otherwise, it's going to look for the virtual machine if you start the virtual machine first. It's just it's a little buggy on that end. So we need to, this is the console for the actual appliance. We're going to go ahead and click accept for the GNS3. Okay, so this is still going to go. It might take a little bit of time as it's getting things to set up. Any questions so far? Okay. And I try to take as many screenshots as possible. Sometimes, you know, if I miss something, let me know. But once your application is already installed, you simply double click the icon, or you can just, you know, launch the application. And in Linux, you can actually launch it from terminal because it's designed for administrator that doesn't have the graphical user interface desktop. So in GNS3 application, you can edit the preferences. That would be for how you wanted to set up. So you wanted for it to see the server, and once it's enabled for the server, you got to tell it that it's a VirtualBox. So if you're using VMware Player or VMware Workstation or Hyper-V, you need to say that there. Okay. and then you need to give it the name. So when I wrote this, I have 2, so that's why it says GNS3 VM2, but on yours, it will just say GNS3 VM. Okay, and it's going to connect via port 80, which is HTTP. So what it's going to do is the VM is actually a server, and the application is going to connect to the server. And by default, it's going to try to dedicate half of what your virtual machine, or at least the entire virtual machine. Now you can change this later, but I would leave it alone for now. I know that I put here that you should make it 4,000 meg. So in case that this is not required, in case that you have issues with it, you can go back and modify it. And then you have to restart your virtual machine again to make it effective, okay? And at the end, I think this is already pre-selected. It tells you that in the case where I close my application, it automatically closed the VM with it. Because think of it like a web application, it needs the interface to connect to the server. So when you shut it off, it automatically turns off the VM. Okay, once you configure that, apply OK, and then you would have everything running from at least the base. Okay. Any question? Okay. So what I did is I tried to find as many image location of stuff for your GNS3 as possible. If you go to this website, this is somebody repo, GNS3 repo, right? They maintain this. They also showed you how you can use Dynamips, and Dynamips are a little older. They are images for Cisco appliances, and it's perfect for testing stuff for last week and the week before, right? Like week 1 and week 2. Like week 1, we talked about networking, so you can start the network, and then, so it gives you the process on how to, if you wanted to connect 2 PCs together, you can see how it walks you through that. So this is like a reference guide, and it's perfect for GNS3. So, and it gives you all the screenshot, everything that you need, how to link things together. If you wanted to add like routers and switches, okay? And it shows you how to configure that step by step, okay? Now, you will also find, so it has like the lab materials. And when I teach CIS40A, I plan to use some of this, but it's perfect. I don't have to rewrite all of that. Okay, so if you're looking at layer 3 switches, it shows you how you can set that up with the simulations, etc. Okay, adding virtual machines, all of that tutorial is there. Did they remove all the Dynamips? Hold on, let me find. Okay, so if you go to the repo, you will find. Okay, so here is some of the image information. Here's, if you wanted to download the images, you click on the repo, and then you go to Cisco iOS images, right? It shows you how you can add images to your GNS3. So what are images? They are operating system for the appliance. All your managed appliance in a network environment has operating system, and Cisco uses iOS. So here, there are some of the older ones, so you can download them. And you would take this file and import it into your GNS3. And it does give you the instruction on how to do that in this particular case, this particular repo. Okay, so there are there are different series. So if you wanted to download, it's there. Additionally, right, those are the Dynamips. And then the GNS3 Marketplace is a good place for you to get free stuff, right? Because why pay for viral when you can get it for free? Most of these are free, some of them are not. Okay, so I'm going to warn you. So in the simulator, you can run a Windows operating system with an Ubuntu operating system, with Juniper, depending on the resources that you have, a server, so you can simulate the entire network and test it using automation and be done with, right? You don't need to go out and buy physical hardware in this case. Now, the challenge with that is going to be, is it going to be stable? How much RAM are you going to be able to accommodate for this? So in this class, the image that we probably would use that will be effective for this week is the Nx Os suite. Okay. And this is for the Nessus. And there are other Nessus in here. Like though this is the one that you saw on DevNet, the 9000 Nessus switch. Okay. So if you want to download it, you can simply click that and then go ahead and download. And you saw on my screen now that you have the download here. So that file is not the only thing that you would require for your switch to work. You also need to have the the OVMF, and I think this one is not free. So, oh, maybe it is. Okay. Yeah. So once you click the link, it's going to give you the zip file, which you have to extract for the .fd. Okay. Let me check on my thing so I can show you. Oh, so slow. Come on. Any question? Okay. So now here is the virtual machine. It's running. Okay. Important thing to see is the value here. Okay. If it's able to nest inside, another virtual machine inside it, it would say true. If this is false, that means that your virtual machine is not nested. Okay. And if you click it, it's going to say this, but you can just press OK, and then it's going to take you to a menu. So this is their menu. If you're curious, you can always scroll down and look, right? This is just the general information channel upgrade. Shell, if you wanted to open Shell, then you just press enter and it will take you to Shell if you wanted to test. I ran Shell yesterday on it, and then I installed a bunch of tools on it. It is Ubuntu in the back. So, it has terminal. It's just really easy to use too. So if you want, you can test it out. And then you can check for internet connection. So here's the QEMU in case if you need to switch to QEMU. So if you intend to use like Junos or Junos, you will now have to implement QEMU, and it is unstable in a nested virtual environment. I just want to let you know that. Okay. So these are the options. And then if you wanted to shut it down, you can do a shutdown there. Okay. But anyway. Okay. So it's just going to run like this. There's not a lot for us to really click and point. We're going to use an interface once it's ready to go and whatnot. Okay. Are you okay with this? Any question? All right. So once you have, so I added some materials for you here, and it really, do you have to use the Nx OSV? If it doesn't work out for you, you can use another Nx. I'm fine with that, right? I wanted you to kind of see how, how to be able to incorporate all of this. After, when you start launching the application, create a project, give it a name, so that way you will always have that topology, right? So when we say topology, what does that mean? that would be a layout of a network with appliances and things that we would require for our to represent our network in the real world. So make a project called Lab 3, and then you are going to import in the appliance. And this is when you're going to need the images that you downloaded. Okay. Now you don't have, I think it's going to default to QEMU library, but I haven't tested without the QEMU library to see if it's going to work. When I saw, you know, I wanted to check it. So I looked at some video, and some people, they don't use QEMU library. So, you know, you can test it, but I had used QEMU library, and it was fine. Okay. And then after that, you are going to also need to install the titanium, which is an additional file, the second file that you download. You saw that I showed you how to use the NX9000. You have to get the FD. And I tested it a little bit last night when I had some time, but I didn't finish it with the NX9000 on it. Okay. Any question? Let me see if it's not done. All right. So while
What
you
did,
yeah.
what did you say the titanium's for?
So this titanium final, this is actually the interface for it. So the image is the operating system, but you have to also connect to the operating system. It's a tool for it. So, but if you don't have the file, the missing file, it's not going to work. Okay, I'm gonna use my other system now, so I can show you, because this takes a little bit longer than I expected. Possibly because we upped the yeah. I will put the video out you know, tonight, so if you miss something at the beginning, that's okay. Yeah, I understand it if you're going to be late to class because of work or other things. That's fine. All right. So I hope it doesn't crash on you, because I changed a bunch of stuff last night. Forgive me if it crashes, okay? Okay. So we talked about installation, downloading, and then now we're going to set it up. Okay, so GNS3. Here's my GNS3 desktop. And notice that I don't have any server things going. Okay, so if you wanted to bring in appliances, you need to have the VM going. So it's going to want to see my virtual machines. So now my VM is going to be starting. So if you set it up through the steps that I illustrated, it's going to start when my desktop starts. So we want to make sure, then we can go to Virtualbox. Oh, it did go right here. So it automatically going to launch this with it. And how do I know whether it started or not? It's going to be right here on the right. So once it goes green, that means it's ready. Okay. And then let's say we're going to call this test 3. All right, so here's my canvas. So I can drag and drop my device. So as you bring in your devices, they would be on this list. It would be like this for you. Okay, and you can drag this box anywhere you want. Now on the older version of this, they have additional menus. It also depends on what kind of template that you bring in. So when you download an image, that's considered a template. And then when you download the second file, like Michelle asked, the titanium, that's really the OS interface for that particular appliance. So you need 2 of those files to work together. So how do I bring in appliances? The software only comes with like NAT, VPCs, you know, some of the ATM switch, the Ethernet switch, which gives you a very basic network. You want to have network automation. This is a virtual machine that's you can launch your script on through its console, through its terminal. Okay. So you're using a virtual machine inside the virtual machine to test your script because you're simulating a network inside a virtual machine, right? So you can add that. So I'm going to walk you through that. So first, make sure that we had set up our VM environment by using the edit and preferences, okay, because it needs your VM in order to install. Second, then we would start with file, and then we would go ahead and import in appliance. Okay. And then you can go and find your image that you download. Okay. And I downloaded a few, as you can see. Now, Juniper is going to require, you know, a little bit different compared to the Cisco. So let's say that I wanted to bring this in. Okay, so it's going to say install appliance for GNS3 VM recommended. We're going to go ahead and click next, and then it's going to put it into the bin, right? See how it shows the missing file here? Okay, so what you have to do is you have to click on each one, and then what you're going to have to go next. Let me see. Maybe it's not. Oh, yeah. You click on this and you're going to go import. And then you're going to find that file that you downloaded. Okay. So if you don't have it, it's not going to work. So in the case where this is the XRV, right? I don't think I downloaded the XRV for it. So go back to the marketplace and download the second file for it. And so once you have it, you're going to click import and then it's going to work. Okay. So there are two things that you need to be downloaded. Now, let's say if we do this one, we have to make sure that do I have a decal? Maybe. Maybe not. Okay, so once you have everything downloaded, both files, you're going to import them in, you're going to click next, and it's going to install. It's going to tell you that it's going to put it on the VM, and you know, you're going to need that VM in order for it to work. Okay, so once you have that, you have the appliance that you need, you can drag them onto the canvas. So let's say that I wanted to use this one. I'm going to go ahead and click it here. And then I think the lab tells you to use a switch. Okay. And we would go ahead and get that from the server. What does it say? Oh, maybe it's not able to the checksum, because sometimes when you download, you don't have the proper checksum. You have to So when you see the message like that, it will tell you that it's not able to fully load it, possibly because the file's corrupted or it didn't validate the checksum for the software. Then what you have to do is you have to go back and redo that process and re-import it into the appliance. But anyway, you're gonna need a NAT. Okay. So this is gonna represent that. And then you're gonna need a network automation. And that one does take a little longer. Sometimes it drops it. Weird. Where are you? It didn't go in. I don't know why my automation doesn't want to go in right now. But I cannot install Cisco iOS on the XRV version. Yeah, so it's having issue with my QCal file. So I have to re-download that file and then re-import it in. Okay. So real quick, if you want to connect this, you simply click the link and then you can start with the switch and then you can go to another switch. See, I'm sorry, it's a little slow. I have like 4 network automation. So in order to remove, you just right click it and then choose delete. Yes, so I'm gonna do delete the 3. I'm gonna delete the 2. No, I don't want that. Yes. Okay. All right. So we can go ahead and connect it by clicking the link and then go from here to here. You can choose any of the port on the switch, that will be fine. You know, ideally, physically, we do care about that in networking, but for the sake of practice, you can choose anyone and then you can go from that to that. Select the other one. So if it's green, then it's gonna go. I'm gonna use another appliance, okay? So that way you can see how that works. So for the router, there's only 2, so we can choose the fast Ethernet for that, and that will connect out. Okay, so we have these things, and for the sake of illustration, I'm using a different appliance because this one I have is not fully working. So now what you're gonna do is if you wanted to start them up, you just click the green button here. Okay. And they should show green. If there's a red, something's wrong with the appliance, like it's not connecting. Okay. So once it's green, and you can even do an R1, but your script is going to be a little bit different than the NX. You use a different library. So if you wanted to test the stuff that we did last week, you can draw it out like this and then simulate it in here. So next I'm going to show you as to how to use the console. Click this right here. And you saw this and you know, I know Michelle said that it's really small, but what it shows me is there are 2 things that I can manage. The router 1 and the system, which is the network automation. This network automation system is where I'm able to run my script. Okay. And I'm going to use that system to run the script for the rest of all the appliances that are connecting. And you can check out some people, you know, material online that they have a lot of different appliances that are connecting. And the point is for you to use this and you can just continue to make your topology grow bigger and bigger and bigger, right? You can put a server on it. It also depends on, you know, how large is your virtual machine is going to be able to accommodate. But right now, like, yeah, we can throw on a few more appliances. We just got to bring in the template for it. Okay. So over here, you know, it says that, so this right here, it tells you, okay, the information about the system, what it's connecting to, etc. Let me see. So this is a router 1. Let me see if I can fix the preference real quick. Console application, solar putty. Is it under missing? I forgot where it is at now. Oh, so annoying. But anyway, let me see if I can find it later on. But in the preference, you can set up things like for Dynamips, Cloud Nodes, VMware, Virtualbox, etc. It tells you the description. Okay. Anyway, so on this one, basically we are connecting to the router, and by default, it's going to be R1. Okay. Let me expand it fully. Maybe it's a little better there. Now you would see this. So we're going to go ahead and do enable. Okay. Make sure that it's enabled. Then we're going to do config T. Okay. So now you notice that this is in configuration mode. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and do IP address. Let's say 10.10.0.1. See. Yeah, it didn't like my IP address there. Let me see. Okay, 1 second. Okay. I gotta look at my template for my. Okay, I think I found it now. All right. I forgot to set up part. Okay. So let's do exit. So we are, oh, I didn't go into screen share with you guys. I apologize. Okay, so let's talk about configuring, because you have to set this up in order to print everything out. So I'm in my appliance, enable. You can do EN or enable, that's fine. Make sure it's in enable mode. And then we would do a setup. Here is, it's going to take us into configuration. It's going to ask us whether we want it to do configuration or not. We're going to go ahead and click type yes. Okay, and then it's going to tell me, oh, do you like to enter the basic management setup? Yes. I don't know why I keep signing with the T. Host name. So let's say that we call this our we say gateway 1, let's say. Okay, or you can name it anything that would be easy for you. Let's say we call it GW1. Okay, so in the lab, what it asks you to do is it asks you to set up the name and then write the script to be able to print out the actual appliance name. Let's say you need to do inventory, right? So we're gonna go ahead and set up our host name. So now it's gonna ask you for the passphrase. So we're gonna use Cisco generic password. Cisco 123. Not a good security practice, by the way, right? But just for practice right now, we wanted to test for the lab to see if it works, right? And then if you wanted to put in the virtual terminal password, so we can use the same thing. CIS123. Configure SNMP network management. You can configure it yes or no, just put no. And then what it tells you is, here is the summary of the information. You have two interfaces, that means two physical port for connection. You need to assign IP address to those. Okay, so first we have to look at what the interface is, okay, and then how you would assign, what kind of address that you would use. Okay, and I think I wrote down some instruction here. So this was one of those drafts that I've done. So the interface, you wanted to put the name of the interface that you're using. So if it gives you a specific name, you got to type it exactly like that. Otherwise, it's not going to take it. And then it's going to ask you the media for that type of, what kind of cable goes into that interface, basically. So this one is 100 base TX. And if you ever took some networking classes with me, you know that 100 base TX is what? It's a fiber, right? So when you see the X, it's going to be fiber base, and then this is the speed that goes in the front. So now after that, it's going to ask you, yes to use a certain media base, right, for it, and then no if, so it depends on the particular router. Okay, so if you want to configure the IP address, you got to set up the interface, and then it's going to ask you to configure IP. But if you do a setup and then you do IP address, you can also manually just skip all the other steps. So what it's doing is it's showing you how, it's walking you through the process. So we're going to go ahead and type in fast Ethernet, which is the interface 0-0, right? And then that's going to be the interface. So it tells me, is this 100 base TX? So we're going to go ahead and type yes. And then we're going to operate it in a full duplex mode. No. And then to configure the IP for this, yes. And then the IP address, we can type in 10.10, let's say .0.1, because almost all edge routers starts with the 1. And then is this that subnet mask? It suggests that this is a class base A, so I'm going to use a default subnet mask for this. Okay. And then what it tells me here is it rename the host name. It encrypted my passphrase. My password is CIS123. And so if you forgot the password and you can't log into your virtual router or switches, just delete it and start all over, because you can find out from it, but in order to find out, you have to know the passphrase, and without the passphrase, you cannot get some of the other passwords. So and then all the configuration that I set up is this. So last week we built scripts that automate this process for us. So in order to understand the script, the flow of your program on how to use pexpect, you have to go through it yourself. Like you have to see how that router respond and what kind of question it's asking, so we have some kind of expectation, and we would implement regular expression in it, right? Like how it asks us yes or no, or it's asking for a certain number with a colon. This week we're using the Nx environment, and Nx you can incorporate NC client. So the best example that you can use for your lab this week is the example from your textbook. Okay. And the first example is the easiest one to follow. Okay. So after you add the NX switches, or one of the switch that you wanted to use, you would need to write the script and get it to work properly. We wanted to make sure that we do pip with the NC client. So we would do as from NC client import manager. And then here, basically, it just sets up the connection information. It's going to do manager connect, the host, make sure that it matches. So we hard coded in the IP addresses, right? And then the port, since it's using SSH, and then refer to the name and, refer to your lab on what the criteria would be. So give it a host name. And then to verify the host key, we can say false. And then the name that you wanted to give it. Okay. So earlier you saw that I gave it gateway 1. So you wanted to specify what name that you wanted. So for the Nessus ones, you wanted to keep it like NX or Nessus or something, that way you know what kind of model that is. And then following with that. So because this is a tuple, what we do is we would have a for loop that will iterate through it, and then to be able to give us the printed value. So just like what you saw in the console here, right? We wanted our Python script to give us this. Okay, we want our Python script to give us what IP address it is, what's the name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? After we set it. So instead of setting it, what we can do is we can automate that process and be able to print it. Okay. And that's the whole point. So once it's done that, it's going to close out the connection. And be aware that Nessus uses port 22, and port 22 is SSH. Like what we've done last week, we talked about how to go through and set up the keys for SSH. So if it's a brand new device, it's not going to have all of that ready. So you have to get into the actual device and then set up the SSH and so forth. Okay. So I know that I provided screen capture for this code in the notes. So you can follow this example, or you can also write your own, and then refer to the NC client module to be able to incorporate this for, and this is used with the NX API. It's a little bit different than other type or other model in Cisco. So keep in mind that, different model or different series of appliance have different API, and this one is for the NX, which is Nessus. Okay. Any question? Okay, so I had walked you through most of the processes in how to be able to get everything set up and, get your lab going. And I hope that you were able to maximize GNS3 capability, expand your knowledge, test, play with it. It takes a effort to really set that up and understanding how to use it. Look at some tutorial. I provided some resources with the tutorial here on how to use the NC client. Of course, you also find a lot of resources online as well. You can use Nano if you are in the network automation console, because it is a Linux machine. So you can use Nano as a text editor and write it directly in that. Or what you can do is you can write it outside and then import it into the actual virtual machine, which takes a little bit of effort. I just want you to know that. So if you write it on the outside, like a regular host system, then you have to bring the file into the machine. But if you can access the terminal and use Nano or Vim, just write it directly into the machine and run it, through shell or terminal. Okay. Any question? Okay.
This is indirect question.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I saw there was a YouTube video that can install VMware using ESXi,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess it would be wise to use the new Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 GB RAM,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use VMware ESXi. Just make sure that you have the hardware accommodation for it. And yeah, so if you wanted to play with that, you can play with that. And even with this using ESXi for GNS3, they have that too. Okay. So can you use your Pi for this stuff? Sure, but keep in mind that processor is not as fast as what we would be in some of the computer system. And then the allocated storage is only based on the size of your SD. Okay, so if you wanted to do Linux on top of Linux on top of Linux, that's fine. It's just not going to have, and sometimes you run into resource allocation as you see how much RAM that we need for these things. Okay, but virtual machines are virtual machines. You can run little virtual machines like Kali virtual machines, Ubuntu on smartphone. Even you can run OS on smartphone like Kali and Ubuntu and all kinds of stuff. So not a problem. Okay, so do your best, right? Try to produce. If you exhaust all your avenue, please communicate with me. I'll see what I can do to help you. And if all else fail, if you can't set up GNS3 and nothing is working, write the program and then provide me with the screen capture and so forth. But I will help you with troubleshooting some of these areas if you run across those things. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So I can send you off to do great things with your networks. I think that's it for me today. I know that I want to give you time to work on it. I'm going to be available for a little bit for questions. Yeah, Rogelio knows. He just type his name in there. Yep, type your name in the chat, please, and work on your lab. And then let me know if you have questions. See
My
you
third
next week.
semester in a row, so I'm already well trained.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for attending today. Have a good week, and I will see you next week. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye. Bye, Seth. Bye. So, Chris, how did that go? You able to get everything going? No?
What part? What part?
I don't know. I was just wondering if you got pretty far on it or.
Oh no, I was just following along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you run into issues, if you have questions.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think it's going to be good for you to experiment with this one. So.
All right, cool.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, awesome. I'll see you next week.
Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Oh, are you competing for RCC with the NC, the Mayor's Cup?
Yeah,
You are?
I'm not. No, I'm not because I took a lot of my plate. Well,
I
actually, you know
know.
what? When is it? When is it again?
It's the 13th. It's on the
No,
Saturday.
it's on Saturday. No, I don't think so then, because I took a lot of my plate and I'm trying to get the Infosys job. So
Yeah.
hopefully by the end of the week, I either get it or I don't get it. That way I can focus on plan A.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
Well, and there will be times that you're gonna go for different jobs. So it's good. You give yourself opportunity, but don't feel bad that you don't get it. There's always gonna be another one, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
No,
but yeah.
yeah.
I
I did.
have two students that are going for it. They're kind of they competed when they were in high school. So I
Okay.
have a team of two right now, and then I think I'm gonna sponsor a high school team if nobody else wanted to go. So we give it a shot. You know, it's kind of like
Yeah.
last minute. I wasn't gonna pursue it, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to waste money because that money is, if we don't spend it, it's gonna go, we have to return it. So
Yeah.
I said $500, student can use a good experience.
That's
Okay,
true.
good.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think, and also I think that, no, wait, is it that weekend? I don't know. I think we might go to Mexico on the weekend in March, but I have to talk to my wife. So
right.
I
You
think,
know that the NCL starts a week after that or something like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm not gonna participate like again. Or if I do get the job, I will participate because I'll already have something off my back
Mhm.
and I can focus on it. But if I don't, then I'm gonna keep. I really don't know. It's still iffy. It all depends on by the end of the week. I'll know what my future holds.
All right. Well, and then other plans in case if it doesn't work out, but that's a good start for you. I hope you get it. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. See you
You're
next week.
welcome. Bye.
Bye.